Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the podcast, The Joyful Frugalista. And now here's your host, Serena Bird.
Human Frugalistas, and welcome. Today I have a special guest, and of course all of my guests are special. Today we're going to talk about smart women and how can they save and invest for their future. But first I have a favour to ask of you. If you enjoy this podcast and find it useful for you, please pay it forward by sharing with a friend. And even better, please follow this podcast, The Joyful Frugalista. Today's guest is Téa Angelos, founder and CEO of the Smart Women Society. Téa has helped more than 500,000 women get smarter about their finances, career, well-being, and relationships. Téa is also the author of Smart Moves, Simple Ways to Take Control of Your Life. Welcome.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
Look, I'm so glad that we're going to be talking today about smart women. And I really like that word. And I think sometimes, so much of the early literature for women on money sort of had this underlying assumption that women were not smart.
Absolutely. And I think there's a lot of stigma as well around the word smart and it being seen in a negative way. So we've really advocated for changing that viewpoint of women being seen as smart and that word being seen as something empowering and something to aspire towards, because women are powerful, they are smart, they can do amazing things. So let's celebrate it and be proud of that.
Yeah, exactly. Like even in the school system today, there's issues, with women choosing not to, for instance, study maths and science because they don't want to be perceived as smart. They don't want to identify with that. If they are smart, they do try and hide it. So it's really important, I think, to embrace that.
Absolutely.
So you have a real focus around helping women get ahead financially. So why is this such a passion for you?
I am so incredibly passionate about helping women become financially independent and financially in control. And the reason for that is that when you are financially independent, it allows you to make your own decisions and make decisions without any influence or control of others. And probably more importantly, financial independence gives you choice. And that's a really key thing. It gives you choice to quit a job that you feel trapped in and take your time to find a better one. It gives you choice to end or leave a toxic relationship. It gives you choice to be there for your loved ones when needed. And that's why it's so important to have a plan for your money, to be putting money away into an emergency fund, into savings, into investments, so that you're never in this situation where you feel stuck or trapped or held back by money.
Yeah, this is a big one, isn't it? This whole, a man isn't a financial plan. But still, that sort of still creeps into a lot of people's thinking about their financial futures.
For sure. And I think that's something that we're big advocates for, about creating your own financial independence, your own financial future, so that you're never dependent on someone else, which is unfortunately a common scenario.
Yeah, it is very common. And, and I think most of my listeners know this, but I'm myself a DV survivor, 10 years now. And I don't know that I would have had the courage to leave if I hadn't have had a good job and known that I was good with money. And even then it was fairly scary. So yes, it's certainly just having that financial background behind you can just be so empowering.
Absolutely. And that's why, as I said, I'm such a big believer in financial independence, because it does give you that choice in those situations to feel confident enough that you're going to be okay and you have the skills and the knowledge to figure it out and figure out all that money stuff. So that's not the barrier for you.
Wonderful. And so why do women need help, or at least a little bit of a nudge to get better with their finances?
I think there's a few reasons to this. And a common example that I like to think of is I was actually observing my husband the other month with his friends, and they were talking so openly about money and things they were saving for, things they were investing in, and they're having this really open discussion. And I think for women, commonly, we shy away from those topics. We don't like talking about money. We don't like talking about our financial goals. And I think there's a lot of work to do to talk more openly about finances and create it as part of our everyday dialogue about being more confident around our finances, not seeing money as a taboo subject. And I think creating all this financial education and financial knowledge is really breaking down those barriers, so women feel more empowered by money and see it as a tool to help them live their best life, not something that is scary or holds them back.
Yeah, exactly. And I've noticed this too. I do have some female friends that I talk money with, but I think sometimes there's certain things that it is difficult to talk about with other women anyway. I think sometimes there's still this edge of competitiveness, and money is such a vulnerable issue to talk about.
Absolutely. And there's actually research that women are more comfortable talking about their sex lives than they are about money. So it is something that we're actively trying to break down, because with financial transparency makes people so much stronger, because they can advocate for themselves better. They can see if they're being underpaid. They can see if they can negotiate a better deal. So where I'm a big believer of financial transparency, because it helps empower women to all get better outcomes.
Yeah, totally. And the women who do invest, research always also shows, particularly with share investing, that women do outperform men, especially young men.
Yes, absolutely. And women typically are better savers, better investors. They're in it for the long term. They're more risk adverse, which means they're not investing into risky stocks, for example. So the research does prove that women are better with their money, and the more we can do to facilitate financial education and financial confidence, the better.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So, like, how many women are vulnerable to economic abuse?
Women are incredibly vulnerable to economic abuse. And there was actually a ABS report that found that almost 1 in 6 women across Australia have experienced economic abuse by a partner. And
Ouch.
and there's an estimated 1.6 million women that have their money or job opportunities either controlled or restricted. So this economic abuse occurs when a person is subjected to behaviors or actions that are aimed at preventing or controlling their access to economic resources, and this causes them emotional harm or fear.
Yeah, I can imagine. And I think we have stereotypical views about what this looks like, and it's not often what we think.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and I know, many very professional and highly smart women who still are not able to access or invest their money the ways they would perhaps like to. Is this your experience working with women as well?
Yes, absolutely. And I think a common misconception is that only certain type of women experience this economic abuse. But as you said, it's women across all different ages, all different stages of life, and all different careers that are being impacted by this. So it's important to know the warning signs, to put in place strategies that help you protect from this. And again, having that sense of financial independence, independent of anyone else, that can help you get out of these situations when they arise.
Yeah, definitely. It's really, really important. So are there some things that women in particular can do to mitigate the possibility of economic abuse, or even mitigate economic abuse when it happens?
Yeah, for sure. And there's a variety of strategies in the short, medium, and long term that can be employed. I'll give you a quick overview. Otherwise, we might be here all day going through all the various strategies. But in the short term, a big thing is creating a budget, understand what money comes in every month, understand where your money goes every month. And I know it sounds so simple, but it is so important to have an understanding of your financial situation, as well as that having an emergency fund. Some people call it an FU fund or a...
Yep, definitely.
Yeah. And building up that emergency fund for yourself to have for unexpected situations, to have for unexpected expenses. And I think that gives you that peace of mind. And I'm a big advocate for emergency funds because it helps you have that clarity and less anxiety around money, because you know that you've got something there in case of emergency. And then also exploring...
just for you too, which is really important.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And then in the medium term, it's all about improving financial knowledge, which I'm sure that's why everyone's listening to this podcast, focusing on reducing your debt, and then also looking at ways to advance your career. So how can you upskill? How can you reskill to increase your income potential? And that's really important, especially if you need to leave a relationship and be on your own. And then long term, it's all about preparing and planning for retirement, whether that be through your super, whether that be investing outside of your super, and creating a will as well.
Definitely. These are all really, really important things. And often people who are, in really vulnerable situations, like any of those things, are actually hard to do. Like, it is actually hard to save money if you're in a controlling relationship, but it's also really, really important to have a strategy to leave.
For sure.
Yeah, not always so easy, but really, really important. So it's really easy for money to leak out. And I know that personally, discovered at least one subscription that I had subscribed to for way longer than I thought I had this year. So how
you are not alone.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just so easy in these modern, days to do this. Like 10 years ago, I didn't have these same sort of problems with subscriptions, but now they just all sort of creep up on me. So in terms of fixing money leaks, what are some of the sorts of things that people can do? Is it good for them to track their spending?
Yeah, I'm a massive, massive advocate for tracking your spending. It is such a small habit that can have a huge impact on your finances. And why it's so impactful, which is exactly what you mentioned before, is that it really helps you understand where your money is actually going every month. So you can get your head out of the sand. You can figure out that you've been paying this gym subscription, but you haven't gone to the gym in a year. And it also helps you reflect on your purchases as well. And it helps you reflect on whether they were necessary or not, whether they were impulsive or not, and helps you rewire around where your money is going and where you want to tweak that. So we have a tool at SWS called our Wealth Building Dashboard that I track my spending in, and it's changed my entire life. So I really recommend that. Really recommend tracking your spending so you know exactly where everything's going, so you can fix any money leaks, you can fix any overspending that you might not even have been aware of. And a common thing we see in our community is people go, oh, I didn't realize I spent X dollars on this. I thought it was way lower. But when they actually did the calculations and tracked their spending, they were shocked at how much they were spending. So yeah, I think a lot of people keep their head in the sand, or they think something when the reality is actually very different.
Yeah, exactly. I had that experience once too, where, signed up for a subscription. It was only like, per week is only this. And I think there was a special honeymoon deal as well to get me in. And when I actually did my monthly budget, I went, oh, per month, I'm actually spending a lot more on this than I am a lot of other things. Am I getting per month that much value from it? And when I thought about it some more, I actually did have access to it at work in hard copy. It's just I sort of didn't realize it because it was just somewhere else in the office. And then I went, well, actually, maybe I don't get that delivered on Saturdays and Sundays, but it's actually, I could read it on Monday when I get into work and it's going to save me a lot of money. But I didn't realize that until I actually tracked it in a budget.
Yeah, for sure. And I think now with everything being on auto pay or direct debit, that it's easy to forget about these things. So I always recommend doing an audit of your subscriptions once every 6 months at least. You can do it once every 3 months, and just making sure that you know what you're paying for and whether you actually need it. So a common one is people might pay for 4 or 5 streaming services. Do you need all of them at once? Could you just use one at a time with the show that you're watching and then cancel that, move to a new one instead of paying $15 for each one a month? And it's those little things that really add up over time, and you can reallocate to another part of your budget or to your savings or investments.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? Like, why do people, and I've had this too, it's been like, oh, I better not cancel it because I might need it. It's like, well, yeah, I can like resubscribe at any time. And usually when you do go to unsubscribe, they'll offer you a better deal, like 50% off.
I was just about to say that.
So it's a bit like, well, why didn't you offer me that when I was here? But, the amount of times that does happen. So you don't have to keep them all at once. You can flick through them as you need them.
Exactly. I like to cycle through streaming services. At the moment, I'm watching something on Netflix. And then if I see something on Binge, for example, that looks interesting, I'll cancel the Netflix and move to Binge. And it just saves you from, again, paying for multiple services that you're not actually using month on month actively.
Yeah, exactly. And I've recently found out that my local library has some access to something called Canopy, which has a lot of BBC services on it. So it doesn't give total free access. It gives a number of tickets, but it's enough for us to watch a few little mini dramas a month as well.
Oh, that's amazing. The library is such an underrated hack, as well as the Libby app, which you can get access to all different books and audio books, and it's all free and you can download the app on your phone. And I think it's a fantastic way to save money instead of buying a million new books each month.
Yeah, exactly. Although to please buy my book and buy Téa's book.
Yeah. Everyone else you can use through Libby.
But that said, there are still book lending rights, but still important books, buy for a gift, buy for a friend coming up, which is fabulous. So in this tough cost of living crisis, and I feel like every single day there's something in the news about cost of living crisis. And I sort of laugh a bit about this because I've sort of been, writing and blogging about savings for some time, and people used to think I was nuts, but now it's kind of like normal. But, can people still save money? Are there still ways that people can find savings?
It's definitely tough at the moment with the increasing cost of living, but I am a big believer that every little bit counts. And from little things, big things grow, which is a popular saying. So even saving $5 or $10 a week is amazing, and it really adds up over time. So I know a lot of people are feeling the pinch right now, but even if you can only save $50 a week, for example, that adds up to over $2,500, which is a huge boost to your savings, or it could be used for a holiday at the end of the year. So don't underestimate the value of small saving every week or every month, because it really does add up over time and every little bit counts.
Look, I totally agree with you on that about the ability of little amounts to grow. And especially if you save them somewhere such as through a micro investing app, or, put that money into your superannuation, salary sacrifice it in. So many years ago, I'm trying to think, back in 2019, I calculated how much I would save if I didn't get a cup of coffee with my work colleagues every day. And I'm not a coffee drinker, so that's not hard for me. I was doing it anyway, having tea at my desk, and instead put that into salary sacrificing and assuming a working life of 42 years, which not everyone does. I was actually really amazed at that outcome. It ended up at it's either 1.2 or 1.3 million.
Wow. Amazing.
Yeah. Of course, there's a lot of assumptions there. I'm not an economic modeler. So, cost of coffee, you're lucky if you get one for $4 these days. For starters.
Well, it's pushing $7, $8, especially with ice drinks as well.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not to say that they're wrong, but it's just a habit. Like if you're having 1, 2, 3 a day plus other things, like even if you just reduce one and save that, there's some big savings that you can make.
Absolutely. And something we talk a lot about in our community is value-based spending. So it's about figuring out what do you value and what really adds happiness and joy to your life, and making room for that in your budget, and then reducing areas that don't really bring you that much joy. So if your $5 daily coffee brings you so much happiness and it's the highlight of your day, make that a part of your budget and enjoy it guilt-free, and then reduce other areas of your budget that maybe aren't as significant. So for you, Serena, it's all about going on the coffee run wasn't of high value to you, but maybe something else is something that you want to make part of your budget. So sitting down and identifying what you value and what brings you joy spending money on, and making room for that so you don't have the guilt aspect to it, and then reducing other areas of your budget that aren't as important to you and redirecting that money towards your savings and investments.
Sounds so logical and obvious, but how many people, I'm sure you hear this all the time. Oh, I would love to go on a trip to Europe. Oh, I would love to have a new car. Oh, I would love to be able to afford a house in a certain suburb. And that's fine. But when you look at how they're spending their money on a daily basis, is it consistent with that goal? Usually not.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's not that one's right or wrong, but it's just whether things are consistent, I guess, in terms of the values. And so we've talked a little bit about saving. So what about increasing people's incomes? Like it's obviously a tricky time where, there aren't a lot of possibilities necessarily for increases in people's jobs, or there is still some. What about taking on additional work? What about side hustles? Do you advocate for side hustles?
I'm a big advocate for side hustles. I think they can be fantastic, not only for earning more money, but for developing new skills. I've known of a lot of people who have turned their side hustle full time, or it has allowed them to change industries. Taking a step back with the first thing that you mentioned about increasing your income, obviously the most obvious way to do so is by negotiating a pay rise or seeking a higher paying job. And as women especially, we often don't push for the pay rises we deserve at work or negotiate a higher starting salary, which can lead to a lot more extra income. I always recommend for that keeping an accomplishments tracker where you enter every week, keep a log of all the good things you're doing at work, all the achievements, all the positive feedback that you've received, and try where possible to quantify the impact and value that you bring to a role, because this will then be the evidence that you use when you're negotiating your pay rise or you're negotiating your salary. And you can say, hey, I've done X, Y, Z. I brought X amount of dollars into the company, or I developed this new program or new methodology. And having that evidence is a great way to justify the increase in income. So I definitely think that's the most obvious way to have big increases in your income. But side hustles are a fantastic alternative if that's not possible for you with the market or the industry that you're in. And something that's important when you're looking at side hustles is asking yourself, how much time and effort can I realistically spend on this side hustle? Because I think that will really dictate the type of side hustle you explore. An obvious one, as I mentioned, are there any hobbies or activities you enjoy that you could turn into a side hustle and make money from? So Some popular side hustle ideas. We've got user testing. That's a fun one and really easy to get into. Surveys, house sitting, dog sitting is popular. Tutoring, copywriting. Is there anything you could coach and make some money from? Virtual assistants. And then something that's a lot more time intensive but could lead to a higher reward is opening an e-commerce store, selling something, starting a business, and that kind of stuff.
It's so much easier, I think, with the gig economy and especially with IT solutions to have side hustles. It's really, opened the door. I mean, of course, there are considerations like making sure it's not in direct competition to your existing work or that it's going to undermine that. And certain professions, do have stipulations around that. But there's a lot more scope now, I think, to have a second role.
Yeah, for sure. And definitely checking your employment contract to see if there's any conflict of interest. It's all allowed with your current employer. But again, a lot of our community have started side hustles in an area that they're interested in or in skills that they want to develop because they want to transition to a new industry or a new career. And it's a great way to kind of dip your toes in without doing a full change and to see if you would enjoy it, if you like it. And I think that's a great way to kind of keep your options open with your career as well.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And I have a final question for you. How's it almost got to time already? Do you have a Frugalista tip to share? And I know you've already talked about a lot of ways that people can save money, but is there one particularly that you'd like to share now? A new Frugalista tip?
Yes. And I always recommend this to anyone that will listen to me. But if you're listening to this podcast right now, go and sign up to Cash Rewards. So they are a cashback platform. They're Australian owned. It's absolutely free to join and use, and you can earn actual dollars back into your bank account when you shop from over 2,000 stores online. So all your favorites is the Iconic, Maya, Chemist Warehouse, Amazon, Booking.com. I used a lot of it when I've been traveling and going on trips. It's super easy to use. It's essentially the best way to get money on your everyday shopping. And I've personally received over $1,000 in cash back from just doing my everyday shopping. So sign up to it. It's the best easy tip to save money.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. And yes, I use Cash Rewards too as well. And I agree. And you can even download a browser on your computer too that'll pop up and remind you if a particular store is on sale, which is quite handy as well.
Yes, it's amazing. It just pops up and you click activate and then the money is put into your account and you just transfer it out to your bank account. It's so easy and it's amazing.
Wonderful. So, Téa, where can people find you? I mean, obviously your book will be in all good bookstores. Where else can they find you?
So you can give us a follow at Smart Women Society on Instagram and TikTok and check out our website, smartwomensociety.com.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being my guest today.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to chat.
What if
The Joyful Frugalista does not provide financial advice. Any opinions or information shared are my views or those of my guests. Please consider seeking independent legal, financial, taxation or other advice regarding your unique circumstances.